Our work isn't easy.
The American Family Association.
On this fundamental issue, I will not yield, and Planned Parenthood will not yield.
All the odds against us. Faithfulness is the word.
My religion compels me, and I love it for it, to be against discrimination of any kind in our country.
Our rights come from nature and God, not from government.
All God asks of you is faithfulness.
35 years of fighting for the family, standing for the church, laboring to return to a moral and biblically based culture.
This is the American Family Association at AFA Today.
All right, and we welcome you to the lower portion of Manhattan in the shadow of the World Trade Center and in the neighboring lot adjacent to Trinity Church and Trinity Cemetery. Kevin McCullough, AFA Today. Glad to be with you. You're seeing a live shot, at least you did there momentarily, of Times Square. It's a busy time. We're celebrating Merry Christmas. New York, one of those cities that is one of the most merriest at the holidays. But yesterday, friend, and I cannot believe this. I've listened to most of the talk radio in the nation's number one market this morning. At least a good portion of them have ignored what I think is one of the most significant stories of the day. And we are not going to ignore it today. In fact, we're going to take action. In fact, I hope that there's some sort of nuclear bomb that goes off, some sort of electrical meltdown of phone systems in the Jeep Corporation's headquarters, the corporation headquarters for Walmart, and on top of that, the corporate headquarters for the television channel A&E. Here's why. Yesterday, and I ended my national show with this yesterday, there was this story that Matt Drudge had put it up as the top link on his page yesterday morning, and I thought it was kind of interesting that they had pulled some quotes out of an upcoming GQ article with Phil Robertson, who's the patriarch of the Robertson family. Duck Dynasty is the television phenomenon that is Duck Dynasty. Phil Robertson, I think a fair assessment of how he behaves is he's very John Wayne-ish. He doesn't take prisoners. He doesn't really care. He speaks his mind. He walks the way he walks. He talks the way he talks. He's not living this life. He's not trying to impress anybody. He's not trying to work out any self-image issues. He knows he's got a long hair. He knows he stinks when he comes in from hunting bullfrogs. He knows all that stuff. If you watch the show, you get this on a regular basis. So GQ, probably like much of the American media this last year, so interested in what is this crazy phenomenon that these Bible thumping, Jesus praying to people have going on in their home, and why is it such a big hit on television? And so there's more of a of an interest from the culture at large this year. Due to the popularity that the Duck Dynasty had. It started out this past television season toppling the previous most watched single event in the year, which had been the Bible miniseries that had been released by Roma Downey and Mark Burnett. When Duck Dynasty came along, it blew away all of the rest of the ratings because it scored an 11 million Cume audience for Nielsen the night that it debuted. Nothing else in primetime, cable or broadcast had toppled that at that point. It's the only thing that has beaten it since was the Sound of Music with Carrie Underwood playing the lead that they did live. And NBC. Yeah, I don't much care for their cable product, but somebody over at the broadcast network says, hey. If that got us 18 million people that night, what if we even got half that on a follow-up night? So they re-released it this last week. All of this to get to, there's a fascination with this kind of Christian subculture, this moral subculture, this faith-underpinned subculture that the networks haven't figured out. They don't know what it's about. They don't understand it. They're not driven personally by the values that drive it. I know. They're here in this city. They're in these buildings behind me. They live and walk in these streets. I know how they talk. I know what they think about. There is an elitism that has to do with sophistication here that is above and beyond what they think you, as the American voter, taxpayer, citizen, can ever measure up to. And so what they do is they dismiss these things. They look at Duck Dynasty and they say, oh, well, that's great for those, bullfrog hunting weirdos down in Louisiana, but it'll never catch on nationally. Well, A&E took a bet. They won the bet. It did. It is now the number one most viewed broadcast in all of cable history. That's how big the audience has been. It's only on its fourth year, but it's had more people watch it than any other program in cable, not broadcast, but in cable history. The number one most watched piece of entertainment in cable history. Now, what does all this have to do with GQ? Well, GQ comes and does this interview with Phil Robertson, who's the patriarch of the family. The show, if you haven't seen it, it involves the patriarch. It involves his sons. They already had $1 million duck call business before the TV show ever came along, but they decided that they were going to live their life on television. So they've done this reality show for the last couple of years. It has been hugely successful, and there's some signatures to the show. One, the brothers are dysfunctional, but they're very loving towards one another. The one brother who's in charge of the company, he's constantly chattering at the other guys to get back to work, to do what's necessary. There's a crazy old uncle in the mix that when he talks, it's some of the funniest stuff you'll ever see on television, period. And then you've got this John Wayne guy, this Phil guy who's retired. He let his sons take over the business. But he sits in his camouflaged easy chair, and he sermonizes on things. The grandkids will come over, and he'll say, "Hey, don't be like your yuppie dad. Let's go out and hunt some turtles or something." I don't really relate to the framework of exactly what they do because I was never that outdoorsy, even though I come from a similar part of the country as where they are all from. But in this case, Phil is kind of the beloved grandfather. He's the patriarch of the family. People look to him. They always turn to him when they can't figure out how to do it. And he gets it done. There was this one great episode where he's all of the boys are trying to get this beehive out of the tree, and they just think they've come up with all these ways to get it down. And every time they go, they just get stung, and they're in misery and pain. Phil goes out with the youngest grandson, smokes out the bees, gingerly lifts the hive out. They get it all the way back. They harvest the honey. No one gets stung when Grandpa does it, when he shows up. And that was the beauty of what this allowed this show to become, to see, to observe, is this family, this what at times has been very dysfunctional family, to come together and to love one another. And they end every episode around a table breaking bread, and Phil Robertson usually leading them in prayer to God on television. This is not normal stuff in American television fare, but it has become the most watched cable television product in the history of cable television. Now, why is that? Well, because partly there's a lot of people in this country that share the values of those weird, long-haired, long-bearded hippies down in Louisiana. There's a lot of people in this country that believe in God. There's a lot of people that believe the Bible is an important book. There's a lot of people that believe that family accounts for something, and there's a lot of people that hold their values. So GQ is trying to figure out what they should be doing in all of this mess, and when they finally put it all together, they go, maybe we should interview the guy that is responsible for all of it, the daddy, the John Wayne of this family. And so they get him on record. Now, they asked him an independent question. They said to him, what do you consider sin? What does sin look like? And he talks about how illogical sin is in today's modern age. He talks about how illogical it is. And he talked about different kinds of sexual sin in particular. And he used more descriptive language than I would be comfortable using. But he said, I don't know why a young man would ever seek another man's posterior when God created him to enjoy the fruit of womanhood. Okay, that's as descriptive as I'm going to get it. But he was a little more cut to the chase than that. But what he said was absolutely 100% true. And he said, I don't get it. He said, it doesn't make logical sense, dudes. And he has these kind of, irreverent but kind of funny and quaint and kind of endearing ways of expressing himself to other folks. So yesterday, Matt Drudge puts this at the top of his webpage just for the fact that the interview had been leaked and these snippets were coming out. It didn't take a full day, friend. It didn't take a single full 24-hour period for the group called GLAAD, Gay Lesbian Alliance Association of whatever. I don't even know what all stands for. It's just GLAAD. It's the double AD. Organization decided to go to A&E, the network that the show appears on, and demand that Phil Robertson be removed from the broadcast. Now, last night, as news of this began to leak out, social media began to go literally berserk. Within my ability to count in my limited amount of time that I have for social media, I was on last night, and I started watching. There were several support Phil Robertson pages that sprang up all over Facebook. Twitter were starting to repeat certain hashtags. There were a lot of things that people were saying and that they were wanting to express boldly. We got into that game ourselves. We created a profile for your icon. If you want to use it, I put 2 hashtags on there. Faithful Phil is one of them. Faith-filled Phil was another one. But several people adopted it and they started spreading it. We got into that. But I started reading these threads of what people were saying. I started getting into the substance of what they were saying. And all of a sudden, you had 2 camps of people emerge. You had one group of people that said, this is wrong, this is unjust, he shouldn't be fired, put him back on the show. You had another group of people that said, no, the network is free to associate with whoever they wish. So if they wish to fire somebody, it's within their right to do that. And by the way, I would say that both camps are right on the fundamental premise of what they were saying. The network certainly has the right to associate with whoever it wants and for whatever reason it wants. But I want something to be perfectly clear here, friends, and this is where I got into a little bit of a scrap with some people on Twitter last night. Actually, it was this morning. I think it was about 4 a.m. I hardly slept last night. They were going back and forth, and this one person was saying, yeah, it's the right of the network to associate with who they want to. Well, sorry, friend, but I want you to think about this. Up till about 48 hours ago, this network had chosen to associate with Phil Robertson, knowing that he was a born-again Christian, knowing that he was a Bible-thumping preacher, knowing that he is someone who believes in traditional family and values. In fact, the argument can be made that's why they put him on television, because they had seen how this could garner a huge audience, which it did. And they benefited from it financially and commercially for 4 years. Let me make this really clear, friends. This wasn't about A&E going, oh, this guy is so dangerous, we have to disassociate ourselves from him. That's not what it was at all. You know what it was? What it really was? This was an issue of one activist group acting like a bunch of guerrilla thugs in the midst of warfare and saying to the network, if you don't make this change, we will make you pay. And what they did is they took the word of activists and thugs and they said, we're going to bend the knee to you instead of the record-breaking audience that gave them the most watched primetime show in the history of cable television. Does that make any sense? Can anyone comprehend how that actually gets put together? Who's in the boardroom and makes that decision? Okay, let's see. Well, we got this activist group, and they're really mad. But at the most numbers of people in the entirety of the population, they could only probably maybe muster up 3%. Now, out of 300 million people, that's what, 9 million people. Oh, but wait a second. On our debut night, Duck Dynasty had 11 million people the night it debuted. Wait, in just doing the math, if you counted every homosexual that was in the country versus every viewer that was in there for just one night of their broadcast, not all of their nights put together, just one night. If you did the math and you put them all together, the numbers are still on the side of the people that watched the Duck. So here's what we're going to do today, friend. We're going to help A&E understand the mistake they made. We're going to do it nicely. We're going to do it kindly. But when I come back, I'm going to give you phone numbers. And I want you to do what we've been talking about here. I want you to go. I want you to call the number. I want you to leave your message. I want you to call me back and tell me what they say when you call. I'm Kevin McCullough. I'm wearing my camouflage hat today because this is National Camouflage Day in support of Phil Robertson. We're coming right back on AFA Today on AFR Talk.
An American Family Minute with Bert Harper, Director of Marriage, Family, and Personal Ministries for the American Family Association.
Oh, little town of Bethlehem is a very